Hundreds of years before Europe knew about robots, a Muslim engineer from the small city of Diyarbakir had already created a mechanical servant that could pour water, an automatic musician that could play instruments, and a giant elephant-shaped clock that told time using water. His name was Al-Jazari. He was born in the 12th century, during the Golden Age of the Artukid dynasty. But Al-Jazari was not a poet, not a warrior, not a preacher. He spent his time with gears, water valves, and levers. While the world was busy talking about heaven and hell, he was building something no one had imagined before, machines that could think mechanically. He didn't just invent clocks or washing devices. He was a pioneer who combined art, math, and science into something magical, the automaton. In his book, The Book of Knowledge of Ingenious Mechanical Devices, he described over 50 amazing machines. He included drawings, formulas, and step-by-step instructions, just like a modern engineering book. But sadly, the world did not remember him as a great scientist. His name was forgotten, buried by a time that wasn't ready for his ideas. And today, when you press an elevator button, turn on an automatic faucet, or see a dancing robot, you are touching the legacy of a man who lived 800 years ago. The question is, why did we almost forget him? In the 12th century, deep in southeastern Anatolia, there was a small kingdom rarely mentioned in history books, the Artukid dynasty. It was not as big or powerful as the Abbasids, but inside the strong walls of Diyarbakir, this kingdom protected something far greater: knowledge. Diyarbakir was a fortress city. Its tall black stone walls protected markets, mosques, gardens, and one grand palace. Inside, poets recited verses, scholars debated religion, and rulers talked about war and taxes. But one man in the palace was different. He didn't join debates. He didn't write poems. He didn't sit on the royal court. His name was Al-Jazari, and he was an engineer. His full name was Badi al-Zaman Abu al-Iz ibn Ismail ibn al-Razaz al-Jazari. He was born in Jazarat ibn Umar, a small town by the Tigris River, now known as Cizre in modern-day Turkey. He was born around the year 1136 CE, into a family of craftsmen and inventors. From a young age, he was surrounded by tools, gears, and machines. At first, he made simple tools, but his talent caught the attention of the palace. He was invited to join the royal workshop and later became the chief engineer under Sultan Nasir al-Din Mahmud, serving for more than 25 years. One day, something serious happened in the palace. The grand water clock, a beautiful and symbolic device, stopped working. Water didn't flow, and the time markers stopped moving. The palace staff panicked. This clock was not just a machine, it was a symbol of power and progress. Al-Jazari was called. He stood in front of the broken device, studying its pipes, jars, and tangled gears. After a moment of silence, he said, "This doesn't need fixing. It needs to be improved." He worked day and night. He added a flow control valve so the water moved at the same speed. He built a floating tank system to keep pressure balanced. He added a wooden bird that chirped every hour and metal balls that dropped into bowls to show the time. But there was one new feature that surprised everyone. A mechanical servant, made of wood and metal, would slowly move and pour water into a glass bowl every hour. To Al-Jazari, this was more than just decoration. It was proof machines could copy human actions. With the right design, metal could think. From a hidden place, Sultan Mahmud watched everything in silence. A few days later, he called Al-Jazari to speak with him. "You didn't just repair the clock," said the Sultan. "You reinvented it." Al-Jazari looked down and replied, "The world doesn't need things that only work. It needs things that can think." But not everyone understood. Some court officials and scholars laughed quietly. Why build a machine to pour water? Just ask a servant to do it. To them, it was silly. Why make a wooden robot for a simple task? Al-Jazari didn't answer. He returned to his workshop, lit his lamp, and kept working. His hands were dirty with oil. His mind was full of sketches. On his table, a worn-out parchment showed a design of a musician sitting on a boat. It was not a real man, it was a machine, a dream of something that could come alive. Al-Jazari touched the paper gently, like speaking to the future. Then he opened a new page in his notebook and wrote, Mechanical Notes, Part 1. He didn't know it yet, but that page would become the start of something greater. Not just machines, not just drawings, but a legacy. Days passed. His machines became more complex, his ideas more daring, until one day, he built something that didn't just move, it could think. That morning, sunlight quietly slipped through the leaves of the palace garden. Al-Jazari sat cross-legged under an olive tree. He stayed still like a statue, but his eyes followed every small movement in front of him. A palace servant, with calm and polite gestures, poured water over a nobleman's hands for ablution. Not far away, a bird chirped softly, short, rhythmic sounds, almost like an invisible clock. He didn't just see it, he understood it. In his mind, everything was a system. Water didn't flow by magic, but because of gravity. The servant didn't move just because of manners, but because of repeated patterns. The bird didn't sing because of emotion, but because of instinct. Everything, if studied long enough, could be measured, could be redesigned, could be built again. After he fixed the palace's old water clock, turning it into a beautiful machine that told time with light and movement, Al-Jazari felt something deep inside him. He was not finished. In fact, he felt like he was just getting started. In his quiet workshop, he opened old scrolls again. He read the works of the Banu Musa brothers, 3 brilliant scientists from Baghdad who, 300 years before, had written the Book of Ingenious Devices. Their book described clever machines powered by air and water. He also studied Al-Maradi, a great engineer from Spain who made early water clocks and mechanical tools. Al-Jazari respected them deeply, but in his heart he said, they built tools. I want to create behavior. As chief engineer of the palace, his job wasn't always exciting. He was asked to build a washing device for guests, or to entertain visiting royals. But to Al-Jazari, each request wasn't just a task, it was a mental puzzle, a chance to push the limits of what machines could do. He started small. His first creation was a mechanical servant, a wooden figure with a hidden system of air pressure and water tanks inside. When the pressure reached a certain point, a valve opened, and the figure's arm slowly lifted, pouring water into a stone bowl. Then, as if it knew it was finished, the figure gave a small, respectful bow. The guests were amazed. Some even laughed. More polite than a real servant. One of them joked. But for Al-Jazari, it was not a toy. It was a statement. A machine could behave like a human, not from magic, but from pure design. He didn't stop there. He built a group of female musicians seated on a small wooden boat. Inside the boat, a spinning cylinder with tiny pins followed a specific pattern. When water pushed the boat to move, the pins pressed levers. The result? The figures hit drums and played string instruments. Soft, slow rhythms filled the air, like a quiet song from a machine with a soul. One night, a servant secretly watched the performance. He didn't know why, but something about the wooden musicians made his chest feel tight, as if they understood sadness without ever speaking. Later, Al-Jazari built a mechanical horse and rider. It was meant for royal parades. Inside the horse's belly, he placed weights connected to gears and axles. As the weights slowly dropped, the gears turned, and the horse began to walk, one step at a time, steady and controlled. Some were amazed. Others laughed. But he didn't mind, because every movement was a result of thinking, not dreams, not magic. Still, not everyone was pleased. A few religious scholars started to whisper, is it right to build something that looks and acts like a human? Al-Jazari didn't argue. He calmly answered, I don't try to copy God's creation. I only follow the order God has already placed in nature. One evening, a young servant approached him and asked, Sir, do I have to be a scholar to build machines like you? Al-Jazari smiled and replied, you don't need to be a poet to create beauty. You just need to understand how things work and why you want to build them. His nights became quieter, but in that silence, his workshop felt alive. The machines stood still, waiting for water to flow, pressure to build, the right moment to move. They were silent, but ready. One night, he sat alone at his desk. Around him, his automata stood like loyal companions. He opened a fresh page in his notebook and wrote, "If machines can copy humans, maybe they can help humans too." His hand paused. He looked out the window. Then he wrote a new question. What if water from the river could reach the village without using human hands? He closed the book softly. That question stayed in the air, and the answer would become the start of something much bigger than automata. The morning sun had not fully warmed the land of Diyarbakir. In the distance, the sound of ropes pulling from an old well mixed with the splash of water into buckets. Some workers lifted the heavy containers, their backs bent, their hands wet. Al-Jazari stood nearby, watching quietly. But he didn't feel pity, he was thinking. If a wooden servant can pour water for a guest, he wondered, why can't we lift water up the hill without using people? Why must humans suffer for work that can be done by logic? That night, and many nights after, he returned to his workshop. The room was quiet, lit only by a single lantern and the soft, dripping sound of water in the corner. On his desk, old cloths were covered with new sketches. He didn't just draw tools. He drew systems, ideas, ways of solving real problems. He began building a large well placed next to the river. As the current pushed the wheel, small buckets on a long chain scooped up water, carried it upward, and poured it into wooden channels that led to nearby farms. This was his first chain pump. No horses, no workers, just the power of the water itself, helping people by lifting water. A machine powered by nature, working for humans. But that was only the beginning. Next, he made something more advanced, a double piston pump. This device had two chambers. While one side pulled water in, the other pushed water out. A special valve made sure the water flowed in one direction only. He added an air tank to keep the water pressure steady. No sudden sprays, no slow drips. Smooth and strong. This new system was used inside the royal palace. Now the nobles could enjoy clean water flowing from taps. No more waiting for servants to bring jugs. They could wash, pray, or bathe using water that moved like magic. Some officials were amazed. Some were confused. "This is too complicated," one said. "What if it breaks? Who will fix it? And why do farmers need machines? Just tell their children to carry the water." From outside the palace, others whispered more sharply. Old workers looked at the machines with fear. Water rising on its own, they muttered. "That's not normal. That's magic." Through it all, one person stayed silent. Sultan took it. He didn't praise Al-Jazari in public. But one quiet evening, as they walked in the palace garden, the Sultan gently placed his hand on Al-Jazari's shoulder. "Keep doing your work," he said softly. "But remember, not everything needs to be shown to the world." The words stayed in his heart. He realized he was far ahead of his time. He wasn't just building tools. He was drawing the future. But maybe the world was not ready. Is this world worthy of such wonders? He asked himself. He began to feel alone, even when people praised him. His machines worked perfectly, but no one truly understood how they worked or why they mattered. So he made a new choice. He would not only invent, he would also teach. He started writing, not in the difficult language of philosophers, but in the simple words of craftsmen, woodworkers, blacksmiths, or clockmakers. He described everything: the size of the wheel, the length of the handle, the best materials for the valves, even how to take care of the machines. Knowledge must be shared, not just shown. And on the night when his water wheel kept turning outside, while everyone else slept, he looked at his notebook and wrote one simple thought. If water can be lifted, if movement can be controlled, can machine know when to start and when to stop? A new question was born, not just about power, but about control. What if a machine could respond to something? What if movement could be triggered by an event? What if logic could live inside wood and metal? A new chapter was about to begin. Not just machines that work, but machines that know when to work. The beginning of mechanical thinking. The beginning of automatic control. a legacy that would live on. For hundreds of years, the sun was setting in Diyarbakir. In the distance, the sound of water could still be heard, flowing quietly through the canals powered by Al-Jazari's inventions. Water that now reached farms and homes. People were happy. Officials praised him. But inside a quiet workshop, Al-Jazari sat alone, holding a small gear in his hand, knowing this was just the beginning. He had started to see something deeper, not just movement, but logic behind movement. A system, a pattern. When water drops, it pushes, it triggers, it turns. Just like time itself, always moving forward. That thought changed everything. For the first time, Al-Jazari didn't focus on building new machines. He focused on writing down his knowledge. He wanted to leave something behind, not for kings or scholars, but for craftsmen, metalworkers, and future engineers. So he began to write Kitab al-Hayl, the book of ingenious mechanical devices. He didn't just describe the machines, he explained how they worked, step by step, with drawings, with measurements, with ideas. More than 50 different devices were recorded, hand-washing tools, automatic doors, pressure systems, fountains, and more. All explained like a modern technical manual. But outside the workshop, not everyone understood. Some people laughed. Why build a servant out of wood? Just order a real one. Others were afraid. Isn't it wrong to build machines that look like humans? Even the Artukid king, who admired Al-Jazari's work in secret, stayed silent. He was worried that the court might think these inventions were dangerous or too strange. Al-Jazari felt alone, misunderstood. His machines were not magic, they were logic. They followed rules, patterns, and systems. But the world wasn't ready. In that time, he also built something incredible, the elephant clock. A huge wooden elephant stood in the main hall, with hidden parts inside. Water slowly dropped into a hidden bowl. When the weight was enough, it pulled a string, turned a wheel, made a bird chirp, and rang a bell. It showed the time, without any human touching it. People were amazed, but again, they only saw it as a fun show for royal guests. Only Al-Jazari knew the truth. He wasn't just building machines. He was teaching people how to think logically. As time passed, he kept working. He kept writing. Until one day, he wrote his final words in the book, "If movement can be controlled, then logic can be passed down." He closed the book. There were no celebrations, no applause, only the ticking of his water clock, and the sound of water dripping in a quiet room. Centuries passed. The world changed. In the Renaissance, European scientists rediscovered forgotten books from the Islamic world. One of them was Kitab al-Hayl. They were shocked. Inside it were ideas about pistons, gears, valves, and control systems, things that had not yet been imagined in Europe. Al-Jazari lived 300 years before Leonardo da Vinci. But today, more people know da Vinci. In modern museums, replicas of Al-Jazari's machines now stand. A robot servant that pours water. A female musician who plays the drum on a boat. A system that pumps water without electricity. Today, we call them automation, control systems, flush toilets, even early forms of programming. Many of them began with Al-Jazari. And now, when you push a button or use an automatic tab or see a dancing robot, you're touching the legacy of a man from the 12th century. A man who dreamed far ahead of his time. A man the world almost forgot. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And if you want us to tell the story of another forgotten inventor, just leave your idea in the comments. We read them all. Let's talk and learn together. Thank you for watching.